Welcome to the December the 16th, 1997 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. As we bring you the history of our city, some of the important people that maybe do not even live in our city, but they are very important to its being. And we're so pleased today for our history tape number 324, which will not be shown until January 1998. A very wonderful young man, Judge Lee Jackson of Dallas, Texas. Welcome to the set, Judge.
Thanks for having me, Ruthie.
We're just so delighted to have a young man of your stature in the studio here in Grand Prairie, Texas. And you have been our judge of Dallas County, even though Grand Prairie is located in 3 different counties or parts of our city. But we're have a real special affinity to Dallas County because so many of us came from the Dallas area out into Grand Prairie, and we'd like to document your history and have you as a part of the history that one day we're going to turn over to the Grand Prairie Library so that boys and girls can come back and say, do you know that in 1997 Judge Lee Jackson sat on the bench for Dallas County Commissioner's Court? And a lot of people in our city have never been to your court. They do not know all of the exciting things you do, so we'd like to start out by your looking into your camera and telling the people in video land a little bit about the real Lee Jackson before he became a judge. Would you do that and tell us about your genealogy?
Well, I grew up just across Mountain Creek Lake in Oak Cliff. I went to Lenore Kirk Hall and Daniel Webster Elementary, to T.W. Brown Junior High School, and graduated from Kimball High School. Okay. So we thought of Grand Prairie as a close neighbor at the time, and occasional football rival, but
yes,
I feel like I grew up in this part of the area. I represent over half of Grand Prairie is in Dallas County, so
yes,
we have a special feeling for Grand Prairie and county government.
All right, would you give us your parents' names?
Frank and Fran Jackson. They met in the little town of Atlanta, Texas, in Cass County in East Texas. And I grew up in Oak Cliff. My parents didn't go back to Atlanta after college, but I had one set of grandparents who lived there. And another.
Would you like to name them?
Earl and Minnie Jackson.
All right.
Lived in Cass County. And my mother's parents, Ed and Frances Bluestein, lived in Austin, where my grandfather was the district engineer for the highway department.
Oh, with T-Dot.
So we grew up in a highway family.
Yes, that's wonderful. All right. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I have 2 younger sisters, Lane and Ann. Ann lives here in Dallas and is married, and Lane lives in Chicago.
Would you give us her married name?
That
was a good
I will in just a minute. Ann Taylor lives with her husband Stan. She has a fairly new son, my first nephew.
Oh, great.
Jackson Taylor, and they all live here in Dallas. And
okay.
Lane Jackson in Chicago is not married.
All right. And that's your family, but now let's get back to the elementary schools in South Oak Cliff when you were a young man and first started to school. Are there special teachers that really meant a lot to you beginning in school that were sort of real good friends or mentors that really gave you a good start in your education?
Well, I actually started out in the 1st grade in a private school called Williamson Preparatory School, and Sarah Haskins
yes,
ran that school and later served on the Dallas School Board and was a great friend of mine. And then at Lenore Kirk Hall, Daniel Webster, Brown. I can't point to any one particular person who shaped me in the direction of government. We didn't talk a lot about government back then. It maybe wasn't as fashionable. My parents were not political, and I'm not sure where my first interest in government came. All I can remember of that age is that when the other boys in Oak Cliff wanted to play quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, I wanted to be President of the United States.
Oh, I see.
Now, I got over that ambition. I saw what a horrible job it is, but that's the earliest interest in government that I can remember.
And Kimball High School. Tell me a little bit about Kimball, going all the way from middle school into Kimball.
Well, Kimball had opened, I believe, in around 1961.
Pretty new school?
And so I was there in about its 4th or 5th year. It was a fairly new school.
Yes.
Carter had not been built yet, so Kimball was the newest of the high schools in Oak Cliff at the time. And I enjoyed my time there very much.
Did you excel in academics or sports, or what was the real Lee Jackson all about?
Well, I was a pretty quiet kid, and I was mainly a student. I was not an athlete. I did do one thing that is probably not expected of me, given how quiet an adult I've become, but I was a cheerleader in high school. So I jumped up and down and yelled and screamed and did all those things back when we had each cheerleading squad for the high schools was half boys and half girls.
Yes.
Sort of like it is now in college, but,
Yes.
but it was routinely then back in high school. So I did that, and through that tried out for and was selected as a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader back when those were co-ed teams.
Yes.
Also, and they were drawn from all the area high schools.
Uh-huh.
So for 2 years I was a Cowboy cheerleader in addition to high school.
Now that is a distinction that many of our viewing audience, I'm sure, did not know about, and that is very exciting.
Well, if they only know of the current Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders,
Yes.
it's something they have a little hard time understanding. That's why I don't bring it up everywhere.
Yes. All right. And when you graduated, what year from Kimball?
I graduated in '67.
All right, 1967, you left Kimball, then what happened to?
Well, I had applied to 5 colleges, and I went to the one that was farthest away from home that let me in,
Okay.
and that was Duke University in North Carolina. So
Duke in North Carolina.
I had never been on their campus, had never seen it, but my parents drove me out there and dropped me off, and I had a great time.
Yes.
Graduated there and got a degree in political science.
In political, what brought you in that direction?
That's what my interest was. Not sure what I wanted to do with it. I didn't think that I wanted to be a practicing lawyer, so by the time I was a senior at Duke, I decided I would try local government, and I went over to Chapel Hill at the University of North Carolina
Yes.
and took a course in municipal government that was a part of their city management program. Liked it, and so I applied to several colleges for graduate school and got a scholarship to SMU and came back to Dallas and got a master's degree in public administration, which was
Oh, that's great.
a city manager's training program mainly, and I went to work for the Dallas City Manager's Office in the fall of 1971 as an intern while I was in SMU, and worked there for 3 years. While I was in
Who was your boss for the Dallas City, in the Dallas City?
Well, I had several, but George Schrader was
Okay.
as actually my major boss, and then I was one of his administrative assistants when I got out of college.
And that just was whetting your appetite to continue on in that degree. Did you ever want to be a city manager?
Well, I thought about it, but it takes a certain personality to be a city manager, to let other people go out and give the speeches and do all your work behind the scenes.
Yes.
And I was immature enough at age 22, 23, 24
Yeah.
that I kind of wanted to give some speeches myself.
I see.
So after a few years, I decided I didn't think I really wanted to stick that out for a career. I wasn't married, and I really didn't have any financial responsibility in life, so I went to Austin to work for a legislator part-time.
Okay.
Got a taste of the political process.
For whom?
For Ray Hutchison,
Ray
who
Hutchison. Okay.
went on to become the chairman of the Republican Party and a candidate for governor and a very, very successful
Businessman.
bond lawyer,
Yes.
in addition to the husband of our current United States
Yes.
Senator Kay Hutchison. But I had a great learning experience in 1975 working for Ray Hutchison, and then I came back, and after he announced his retirement, I announced as a candidate for his House representative seat in Northeast Dallas,
All right.
and in 1976 was elected to the House of Representatives. So that was really my first experience as an elected official.
All right. Here you are serving in the House of Representatives as a very young man. Have you married yet?
No, I took my oath of office in January of 1977. I served a term in Austin, and then in Dallas was working for SMU in fundraising.
All right.
And I met my wife in the spring of 1978. So this was 2 years after I was first elected to the House of Representatives.
Okay.
And we got married that summer in '78.
You would give us her name.
Her name's Joan. We're still married.
All right. And you would give us her maiden name.
Bramlett. Her family was from Longview via Chicago.
All right. And was this an accidental meeting or a prearranged meeting?
No, well, no one arranged it for us. We both were working for SMU, and we
Yes.
we met at the office, you might say, and
Yes.
started dating and got married a few months later.
Yes. That was very, very exciting. And you have a family.
We have 2 daughters,
All right.
Martha and Alice, who are now in junior high school.
Oh my, that is a very dangerous age.
Well, they're great kids so far.
Isn't that wonderful?
We have a lot of arguments, but fortunately we get along pretty well as a group.
Mm-hmm. Do you have to use the gavel?
No, they don't show me a lot of that kind of respect.
Not yet.
They keep their dad humble.
I see, I see. All right, and with this wonderful family and working for SMU, what were you fundraising for SMU? Just their general...
Their alumni,
alumni.
Fundraising. Every year they have development programs.
And since you had gone back to SMU to do some of your work, naturally you were a member of the alumni.
Right.
All right. Then what exciting happened to Lee Jackson from there? I'm leaving you right now at SMU fundraising. That's where we have you.
Oh, well, I spent 5 years working in the cable television business, actually.
All right, let's get that down on our list.
I worked for Warner Cable, later Warner Amex, applying for franchises and then later managing small franchises in Farmers Branch and Mesquite.
All right.
And representing them around the Southwest. I went to cities in Arkansas and West Texas and all around this region where they had franchises. And that lasted about until 1984.
Well, that was a pretty new field in this
Very
area
new
then,
field.
wasn't it?
That's when the cities were selecting and building and then first operating their franchises, and it was a difficult time because a lot of the things that were hoped for the industry never materialized.
Yes.
So there were a lot of regulatory issues and a lot of problems. But it was interesting. I enjoyed being in technology for once in my life.
And traveling some.
Traveling some.
Yes. All right. And tell me, does your wife work out of the home?
She's been a writer all of her life, and so depending on our children's needs, she's at times worked full-time out of the house. She has written a lot of magazine articles, book reviews, and a few years ago she and a friend wrote a book called Places to Take Children in Dallas and Fort Worth, which
How
is
wonderful.
Still in some libraries. I think it's out of print, but it was a very successful book, not financially, but very successful in publishing, and she enjoyed it. And she now works for a school in communications here in the Dallas area, doing writing again.
Writing again. That's wonderful. All right, now we have you up to being in the television business, and we have your wife as a writer. What happened to Lee Jackson after that?
Well, in 1984, I left Warner and started working in the executive search and consulting business, and I did that for 2 years.
Is that a private?
Yes.
It's a private.
Right. I worked with friends in that business and
Yes.
did some consulting projects.
Yes.
Never really felt like consulting was my calling, but it was hard. I was still a member of the House of Representatives, meaning that every 18 months you have to stop whatever you're doing and move to Austin. If you have a family business, or if you're a farmer or a rancher and you can time your planting or harvesting activities, or if you're an attorney and you can get a leave, you can maybe fit in the House of Representatives without a significant loss of income. But for most wage earners, it's hard to find an employer where you can have a leave of absence, and it's hard, obviously, to live if you give up 6 months' income every 2 years. So now that I was married, had 2 children, I just couldn't really justify being in the legislature anymore. And I had decided in the summer of 1985 that I was going to have to leave the House of Representatives. I announced that I would not run for another term for personal reasons. I just literally couldn't afford to keep serving in the legislature. That year, our then county judge, Frank Crowley, had died in office.
Yes.
Dave Fox had been appointed to fill that seat until the 1986 election. Dave Fox was is a wonderful man whose whole career has been outstanding leadership in Dallas, and if he wanted to run as county judge, he probably wouldn't have been opposed in either party. He was that well respected. But he had never been a candidate for public office, wasn't sure that he wanted to go through the ordeal of all the political campaign, And so in fall of 1985, he announced that he wasn't going to run for a 4-year term as county judge. And I threw my hat in the ring, had a very long, tough first election. I had a primary opponent, Charles Matthews, who's now a good friend of mine and also a railroad commissioner in Texas. And then Max Goldblatt was running as an independent that year without any party label. And Catherine Kane, who is now Catherine Hall and the United States ambassador to Austria, was the Democratic nominee. So I had 3 opponents that year in 1986 when I first ran for county judge, and they were all quality opponents, and it was a tough...
Yes, all have real good bios, don't they?
And I was the quietest one in the race.
Yes.
And I sure didn't feel like I was the front runner or the favorite, but I won by a very narrow margin. So that was an exciting year.
Yes, 1986 is a memorable time, isn't it?
I remember it very, very well.
Yes, and changing from the House of Representatives to becoming a county judge, tell me about that transition.
Well, I probably ought to stop and explain, in case you have any viewers that aren't familiar with county government, that in the big counties like Dallas and Tarrant County, the person who's elected with the title of county judge doesn't have judicial functions. They're frequently not lawyers, neither Tom Vandergriff nor I are attorneys.
Yes.
We don't sit in a courtroom. Our job is like being mayor of the county. Mm-hmm. So I went from being a legislator, where I was one of 150, and I had no operating responsibility. You go to Austin and you vote on policy issues, but you're not actually responsible for how anything operates. Mm-hmm. But in county government, there are 5 of us on the Commissioner's Court. We adopt a tax rate and an annual budget. We have to approve all the bond elections, issue bonds, hire companies to build projects. We have to approve all the contracts for Dallas County, all the personnel actions, and we deal with 103 elected officials. So it's very much a management job without much legislative duties. We don't make laws, we do business.
That doesn't even count Parkland, does it?
And that doesn't include Parkland, which we're responsible for, although we don't operate directly.
Yes.
We're responsible for the mental health system, although we don't operate it directly. We're responsible for the juvenile justice system, although we don't operate it directly. So the county is a very unusual level of government, but I've enjoyed it tremendously. The challenges are great. You work a lot on human needs and social services, but also on transportation, economic development, and criminal justice, a wide variety of issues. So it's never boring. The things we do actually impact people directly. In Austin and Washington, they debate funding, how much money to put in one program, how much to put in another, but in county government, we actually are talking about where we locate a clinic and who we serve, yes, or where we build a road, or which group of employees should be hired next year and what the salary should be. So like a city manager and a city council, we're making direct management decisions, and that's very rewarding.
I'm sure that some of our viewing audience, they would not realize that there are 4 county commissioners in geographic areas of Dallas County, but you run at large, don't you?
That's right, the entire county. I like to point out to congressmen that my district is 4 times or 5 times as large as the congressional district.
That is true. That is true.
There are almost 2 million people in Dallas County. Mm-hmm. Now, fortunately for us in Dallas, almost everyone who lives here also lives in a city. So they get a lot of their services in Dallas County directly from city government. The city does most of the street work. The cities operate the parks, the libraries, build the storm sewer improvements. They provide police and fire. So Dallas County has some areas where we're the primary service provider, like mental health and juvenile justice, but there are other areas where we support city governments.
And then there are some unincorporated parts of Dallas County that are not in cities or little towns.
Right. There are some unincorporated areas, particularly in the southeastern part of the county, yes, but very few people live in them. Mm-hmm. There are about 7,000 people who live in the unincorporated areas and 1.9 million in the incorporated parts of the county.
Do you all take care of that, or is there like the constables, or is there someone that's over that unincorporated area? Well,
no, in the unincorporated areas, the county is directly responsible for a lot of services. We provide an emergency fire and ambulance service. The sheriff, in most cases, patrols and provides law enforcement services. We have in some small communities still a county-supported library, but And there are some other special governments. Flood control is done by special utility districts. When you only have 7,000 residents in unincorporated areas, it doesn't support a whole lot of service. But the county is responsible for the services that state law says we provide in the unincorporated area.
Do you have anything to do with the budgets of the sheriff's department and other things such as that in the libraries and Parkland and other entities such as that?
Yes, all the things that I've mentioned that are part of county government.
You oversee their budgets?
We oversee the budgets.
Well, that's a mess, isn't it?
It's difficult. State law spells out, for example, that there'll be a certain number of bailiffs and a certain number of clerks and a court reporter in every district and county court. So in a lot of cases, the state law has already told us what the staffing will be. We just have to come up with the dollars.
Yes.
So yes, we have budget authority, but in many cases, it's like a dedicated fund. There's not much we can do to cut it or to change it.
Do you have an office manager or someone that helps you manage this, or do you have to spend a lot of time down it? You just came from county court a few minutes ago.
Yes.
You had court today, every
Yes.
Tuesday from 9 o'clock until you finish.
Right.
Do you have someone that administers the nuts and bolts and carrying on things for you like that, or do you have to stay down there a full 8 hours a day every day?
Well, I'm down there more than 40 hours a week because in addition to the Commissioners Court meetings, I met for 2.5 hours last night on the Juvenile Board.
All right.
I'm the chairman of the Data Services Governance Committee. We do a lot of things directly with the 5 members of the Commissioners Court. We do have a court administrator who serves like a cross between a city secretary and a city manager. Part of his duties are simply to make sure the paperwork moves, and part of it is policy leadership. But he doesn't have the authority that a city manager has. He doesn't hire and fire the department heads. He helps us coordinate. So he sets up a lot of meetings, he negotiates, but the ultimate responsibility comes back to the 5 members of the Commissioners Court.
Is that my friend Alan Clemson?
That is Alan Clemson, who's been our court administrator.
Did he had a birthday today?
We celebrated his birthday today. We gave him a resolution. We teased him quite a lot, but in fact, we value him greatly. He came up through the ranks of the personnel department.
Yes.
And I've commented many times, in city government, you won't find very many personnel managers who become city managers.
That is true.
But in our county, when the Commissioners Court had to fill the position of court administrator, Alan Clemson, our personnel administrator, was considered the most able, and he's done a great job.
Now, you have recently, in the last year and a half, celebrated the 150th birthday of Dallas County.
We are a little bit older than the city of Dallas.
Yes.
When it comes to formal recognition by the state.
Yes.
And we've got just a few buildings that are old enough to remind people of our history. The Old Red Courthouse is one of them, although it's really just over 100 years old. There aren't any buildings except possibly John Neely Bryan's cabin that date back to 1846, and there's a lot of dispute about that little cabin.
I'm sure.
But it is interesting. Dallas has such a new skyline that people think the city is very, very new, but for Texas, 150 years is getting on up there in age.
Yes,
it's,
it is.
Quite a lot of history for a city.
Now, you've told us all about the court, or a lot about the court, but we don't know where you meet.
Well, we meet in what citizens still call the Texas School Book Depository.
Yes.
It's at the corner of Elm and Houston. Officially, it's the Dallas County Administration Building, but it's at 411 Elm Street, and this is the building that used to be named the School Book Depository. So we have 5 floors of office space, and then on the 6th floor is the exhibit about the assassination
Museum.
of President Kennedy.
Yes, and that's a very focal point there near Houston and Elm Street. Do you find that it's you have a lot of visitors coming to your place?
We have several thousand a day on average.
Yes.
It used to be quite a distraction before 1989 when we opened the 6th floor exhibit.
Yeah.
They would mill around the building pointing cameras. They would come in and ask all the staff how they could get to the 6th floor. When you told them that there was no access to the 6th floor, they would go up into the stairwells and go up the stairwell to try to get onto the 6th floor. So it was pretty eerie working there.
Yes.
Before the opening of the 6th floor, because you had a mass of visitors from all around the world and you were not providing them any information at all. Since that exhibit's opened, really we coexist very well.
Yes.
Very few of them come into our building. There's a separate entrance and a separate elevator, so we've been very pleased with what we've been able to do with that building. It seems to satisfy the tourists and the convention visitors who may only be in Dallas one time in their life, but when they're here, most of them want to go to that location and they want to learn something about what happened.
Prior to being at the Old School Book Depository, were you not housed in the records building on about the 6th floor?
I think it may have been the 4th floor.
4th floor.
And that was before my time. I came in '86, and I believe the Commissioner's Court moved in '81 over to the School Book Depository.
All right. Now, what is in the forecast? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Well, my daughters are getting older and older. I'm beginning to feel pretty grown up. I enjoy what I do, and I go into the office every morning interested in a variety of things.
Yes.
I've never been interested in running for Congress or going into politics on a different level, at least not while I have a family at home, and because I don't like to travel that much. So I've always said I'd like to do this as long as the citizens want me to do it, and as long as I wake up in the morning with a spring in my step and an interest in what I do. There are other things in life that I might like to do. I've always wanted to write a book, and I don't think I'll ever get it done while I'm working this hard. And I've kind of wanted to have a chance to take a small business and see if I could make it grow and be more successful. So someday I may get tempted to call it a day in government and go try my hand in small business. I never have wanted to be a lobbyist. Once I get through with government, I don't want to go to another meeting for the rest of my life.
Yes.
But there are other things in life that I'm interested in.
We have 1 minute left on this interview, and I must ask you this question. How do you get along with a big city like Dallas and a big county like Dallas County? Do y'all get along pretty good?
We have occasional conflicts with all the cities.
Yes.
But Dallas, because of its size, is probably the hardest to work with. Sometimes it seems like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing at City Hall. The City Council has other issues and they don't want to stop and talk about what we want to talk about. But I've found over the years, if you build up enough personal relationships and show respect to people, they'll at least call you and talk before they criticize or attack. So it helps to have built up a relationship that's based on some kind of respect and trust. And then if you do business in a fair way several times, when a new issue comes up, people will sit down and talk before they blast you. That's really the only secret that I know of.
I'd like to thank you for all the service that you have given to Dallas County, to Grand Prairie, Texas, and to our Keep Texas Beautiful group that you've allowed us to come there to the county court for so many years in a row.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes, it's wonderful, and thank you for the distinct honor of naming a committee of Beautify Dallas County, Keep Dallas County Beautiful, in our honor. And
well, there's no more appropriate name, Ruthie. Thank you.
And I'll get a thank you note off to you one of these days. I want to thank you for sharing your life with us on this show and wish you Godspeed and being the county judge forever if you'd like to be.
Oh, I don't think so, but thank you.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.